Would you ever eat lab-grown meat? Is it the future of food, and is it a sustainable solution in our food systems? I know many of you have been asking me about lab-grown meat, and I finally have done some research and have been formulating my own thoughts about the developments of these projects entering the United States. Welcome to our in-depth explanation of lab-grown meat, an innovative solution to address the challenges of conventional meat production. And in this video, we'll delve deep into the world of lab-grown meat, exploring scientific processes, environmental impact, the latest news in the United States, the potential to transform factory farming, funding sources, the controversies, and its exciting future, hopefully. We don't know yet. So what is lab-grown meat and how does it work? Lab-grown meat, also known as cultured meat or cellular agriculture, represents a groundbreaking approach that offers a more sustainable and sometimes called ethical method of producing animal-based protein. Unlike traditional animal agriculture, lab-grown meat doesn't require raising and slaughtering animals. Instead, it involves cultivating animal cells in a controlled environment. Scientists start by obtaining a small sample of animal cells to create lab-grown meat, and these cells can be sourced from a living donor or extracted through an animal biopsy. The collected cells are then nurtured in a carefully crafted culture medium, which provides the necessary nutrients and growth factors to ensure and encourage cell multiplication and differentiation. Within bioreactors resembling large-scale fermentation tanks, the cells grow and multiply, eventually forming muscle tissue that closely resembles conventional meat. And this process involves carefully controlling temperature, humidity, and nutrient supply conditions to ensure the cells develop into fully functional muscle tissue. Once the lab-grown meat reaches optimal maturity, it can be harvested and processed into various meat products such as burgers, sausages, and even steaks. And the result is a sustainable and sometimes ethical alternative to conventional meat that requires significantly fewer resources and has a reduced environmental impact. While lab-grown meat is still a relatively new concept, its potential to revolutionize the global food industry cannot be underestimated. As the technology continues to evolve, researchers and industry leaders are working towards making lab-grown meat a viable and widespread option for consumers. The scientific advancements in lab-grown meat are rapidly progressing, leading to the innovations that have the potential to improve food security, animal welfare, and environmental sustainability on a global scale. Additionally, as consumer demands for sustainable and ethically produced food rises, lab-grown meat presents a potentially promising solution for the future of food. Now, I know that many people are a bit against it or think that it's not healthy, but there's a lot of studies that are coming out now that are showcasing the environmental impacts do outweigh the cost that it's taking. So what is the latest news about lab-grown meats here in the United States, as we know that in certain countries it's already been approved? Well, specifically in the US, it's actually a quite interesting story. The United States is one of their key players in the forefront of lab-grown meat research and development. The industry has witnessed tremendous growth and investment in recent years, with numerous startups and established companies contributing to the advancements in the field, just like Upside Foods, for example. And for instance, some companies have successfully conducted taste tests and pilot studies showcasing the progress in improving lab-grown meat taste, texture, and nutritional profiles. Others have secured partnerships with major food retailers and the restaurants, paving the way for potential commercialization. And the USDA, or the US Food and Drug Administration, has recently taken significant steps in regulating lab-grown meat products and approved, actually, I believe it's called Good Side Meat Co. Approval to be able to start to commercialize the product. Now, I don't think it's out yet, but I think there's still developments that are happening from the company. They are collaborating with companies to conduct groundbreaking research, making strides in improving cell growth, the production techniques, and fostering innovation within the field. Now, the positive reception of lab-grown meat by consumers, along with the support of governmental agencies and non-governmental nonprofits, this indicates that lab-grown meat has the potential to become a viable and widely accepted alternative to conventionally produced meat. Now, I think it's really important to note that there's a lot of conspiracy theories or misinformation that's often put out there, similar to plant-based meats, that they're very highly processed, that they have a lot of chemicals, and that they're not good for your body. However, one can easily argue about animal agriculture, such like, our animal sentient friends that are produced or commonly denoted as meats, fish, poultry, whatever, that are actually very high in carcinogens. I mean, meat is listed as a carcinogen here in the United States. Like, is that something that we don't focus on, or only bashing on these plant-based products or these future food innovations? So what is the environmental impact of lab-grown meat? And obviously this is something that's constantly talked about, like carbon footprint. Is it greenwashing? Let's talk about it. So one of the most significant advantages of lab-grown meats in its potential to revolutionize the environmental impacts of meat production is that as the world faces increasing concerns about climate change, crop failures, and sustainability, the role of lab-grown meats in mitigating these issues cannot be underestimated. Traditional animal farming is known to be very resource intensive and contributes to various environmental problems, from deforestation to greenhouse gas emissions, and water pollution from factory farming takes a huge toll on the planet. And in contrast, lab-grown meat has the potential to reduce these negative impacts very significantly. So for starters, lab-grown meat production requires fewer natural resources such as land, water, and food, and lab-grown meat could substantially lessen the environmental strain associated with conventional meat production by eliminating the need for extensive grazing lands and reducing water usage. Moreover, lab-grown meat has the potential to cut down these greenhouse gas emissions significantly, and traditional animal farming is a source of methane, a potent greenhouse gas that's impacting global warming. And since lab-grown meat does not involve raising any type of animals, methane emissions would be considerably reduced in these food supply chains. Another critical aspect is the preservation of biodiversity. Conventional livestock farming often leads to deforestation to create more space for grazing and feed production. By reducing the demand for vast grazing lands, lab-grown meat can play a huge role in preserving these valuable ecosystems and protecting endangered species. Furthermore, lab-grown meat production can eliminate the need for antibiotics and hormones commonly employed in factory farming to promote rapid growth and prevent diseases. The overuse of antibiotics in animal farming has been a major concern due to the development of antibiotic resistance bacteria posing risks to human health. In addition to these environmental benefits, lab-grown meat can increase food security by reducing the need for traditional animal farming, which can be susceptible to disease date outbreaks and functionalities in our own systems. It is really essential to note that while lab-grown meat has the potential to be more environmentally friendly, the technology is still not there, and it's still in its early stages as the industry continues to evolve. In fact, one of the biggest drawbacks that I think sometimes people don't mention is that the technology that is used to produce these lab-grown meats is the equipment is very expensive. Now, it's not to say that the equipment that's used for industrial agriculture, whether that's from the tractors, the planes, the chemicals, the structures that are built for it, are of course expensive too. It's just the technologies and the investment for these systems is still not meeting demand. And I think that's one of the biggest issues for a lot of startup companies is like, how do you scale when investors are not wanting to invest and they don't really trust the technology as much yet? Now, one of the most questions that is asked is, can lab-grown meat defeat factory farming? Factory farming has been long debated due to its ethical, environmental, and public health implications. The mass production in animals confined in spaces, abused and slaughtered, raises so much concerns for animal welfare advocates and has led to numerous controversies surrounding the treatment of animals. And in contrast, lab-grown meat offers a more quote-unquote humane or less exploitative method, since it doesn't involve in the raising and slaughtering of animals, and lab-grown meats eliminates the need for factory farming that produces an outcry and often, is controversial. Moreover, lab-grown meats can potentially address the environmental challenges passed by factory farming by significantly reducing the land and water and greenhouse gas usage. Now, I think a very interesting point that I want to add, and this is more from a vegan, anti-vegan capitalist perspective, is I think the narratives around lab-grown meat is there's a parallel between the rise of plant-based meat. So we look back a few years ago in the media outlets, It said that can plant-based meats defeat factory farming? Or if you see some of the mission companies of plant-based meats out there, it's usually to say we're here to divest or to destroy, or not to destroy, but to win from this exploitative system. In fact, what we've seen is the continued increased usage of animal agriculture, industrial agriculture not being held accountable. And this is where we need more systemic policy, is that I believe that vegan corporations, specifically in the plant-based meat industry, is that I would wish that they can continue becoming more political instead of being apolitical, of saying, yes, we can say that animals don't deserve to die, but if there's no other tangible actions from corporations to actually increase the usage of policies that would protect animals, what are we doing, right? I think it's really great to see the amount of plant-based meats that exist out there. I'm so happy to see in market. Do I think it was a solution to destroy animal agriculture? No. And do I think that there was narratives around people saying that that was going to be the solution? An issue? Yes, like I found that a huge issue, because I think in the multidimensional world we operate in as vegans is that we need different types of solutions tackling different things. Now, I could say that, plant-based industries have contributed a lot of information, a lot of research, and a lot of data to hopefully open consumers' minds. But I think with the lab-grown meat, which is a very interesting conversation, is like I see a parallel with kind of the lab-grown textiles that have been talking in the fashion industry, right? When we look about sustainable vegan fashion, another thing was about mushrooms and mycelium being used for fashion. And in fact, there was recent news that basically said that Milo, I believe, Milo Unleather, the company, was unable to reach investment funding, so therefore, it's no longer plausible, and I believe they laid off a lot of their team members. So these are just examples where I feel like I draw from parallel examples from fashion and food, because I think in fashion you were hearing saying lab grown or synthetic biotextiles were the future of fashion, and they were going to defeat the certain industries, and I feel like that's just a dangerous narrative to have. I would hope that people that are talking about lab-grown meat are not saying, it's the solution, but it's a part of the solution. Maybe it's a part of what we have to do here in our dominant capital structure. Now, I'm not here to bash on, vegan millionaires or billionaires that have made a lot of money from certain plant-based food companies. Not all of them are profitable. I think that's something I need to recognize too. Not all of them are rich. But I do think that it is a dangerous narrative when we're telling consumers this is the future of food, when to me the future of food has always looked through a food sovereignty lens, that it's always going to be about localized food systems from people who know how to grow food, from rural farmers, from rural peasants that have deep relationships to the land. Though that to me is the future of food realistically, while also saying yes, I understand in this capital structure I operate in, an urban environment that I live in, do these technologies have a place to have conversation? Yes, I do think they should have a conversation. They're already here. I mean, even if I were to say I don't like it fully, I mean, they're still here to stay. And so I think one of the things I want to kind of talk more about from a more critical lens, and I would hope that people can maybe challenge this, is that, what worries me about the future of food is that it should not be white people leading these conversations. Yes, I think we need more gender diversity. Yes, we need more LGBT representation, disability representation. But do I think that when you have a bunch of white people accumulating millions and billions of dollars from these technological advancements, is that really the future of the food? Is that only the future of food for a certain subset of communities? Because we know that they need the investment. We know that we need to stop subsidizing animal agriculture, and governmental agencies need to recognize that and start to invest in new technologies. But the amount of power that the animal agriculture and the dairy industry has today in our politics is so entrenched and gross. We have politicians that are literally being funded by these industries to promote it. And in fact, I had friends recently in the sustainability space who were telling me getting reached out by dairy companies to promote milk. It's honestly horrific. These are the challenges that we're up against. And so I think the issue with the funding situation is that I always say, I would want to see Black, Indigenous, people of color, but not just diversity. I want to see people that are represented from poverty or from low-income backgrounds that are trying to change food systems locally in their community. I don't think food justice and food sovereignty are always often talked about in the future of food conversations And that's because you have to talk about racism, white supremacy, and that is sometimes conflicting on a lot of corporations because they choose to be apolitical. And to me, that's not really what we should be having, is that I want to be able to have conversations around lab-grown meat, fine. But I also want to have conversations about justice, equity, anti-racism, speciesism, and inclusion, because an equitable food system isn't someone just replacing the same system that got us here in the first place. It's about redesigning the whole system, uprooting the mentalities of having to constantly grow, having a billionaire, millionaire mindset, and just really focusing on the ways that we can redistribute that wealth in an equitable way and to grow these new programs that are not reliant so much on these extractive systems. So what are the controversies behind lab-grown meat? Because I love to be nuanced here, to look at different perspectives, and I think there's been a lot of good information that's been out there. So while lab-grown meat presents a promising and alternative future to conventional meat production, it has some few critiques. As with any emerging technology, lab-grown meat has sparkled debates and discussions surrounding its development and potential impact. And one of the primary controversies is the use of fetal bovine serum, FBS, in the early stages of lab-grown meat production. And FBS is a blood component extracted from cow fetuses and is used as a nutrient-rich culture medium to grow animal cells. The use of FBS raises ethical concerns as it involves animal-derived products and is not aligned with lab-grown meat. And researchers and companies are actively exploring and developing alternatives to address this controversy. Another controversy that exists out there is the potential for lab-grown meat to perpetuate the industrialized food production. And some of these critics argue that large-scale production of lab-grown meats in centralized facilities may lead to similar issues seen in conventional factory farming, such as environmental degradation and decreased biodiversity. Additionally, the question of consumer acceptance is the next thing, and the willingness to embrace lab-grown meat remains to be determined. Cultural norms, personal beliefs, and concerns about the safety and the authenticity of product may influence public perception of lab-grown meat. And effective communication and strategy and education is really needed in order to accelerate the gaming and the widespread consumer acceptance over that, where the concerns around long-term health effects of consuming lab-grown meat are still yet to be heard of, but it has been extensively tested for safety, which is something to really confirm on that end. And continued research and monitoring of the health impacts of lab-grown meat consumption are essential in addressing these concerns. So it is true, do I think lab-grown meats have a lot of things to be held accountable for right now? Yes, so I think it's not easy for them. I think they have a lot to address, a lot of controversies from misinformation, disinformation, the criticizing of, will this perpetuate the same system that we're in today? Or is there diversity, equity, inclusion, or is it the same white men and white women that have control over these corporations that get to decide what the future of food looks like to them, but not to Black, Indigenous people of color? So what is the future of lab-grown meat and where is it going? So futuristic visuals showcasing the potential of lab-grown meat have been out there. We already know the benefits, and the future of lab-grown meat is filled with hopefully some possibilities and potential transformation. As technology advances and research progresses, several key areas will likely shape the future of lab-grown meat. Firstly, advancements in cell culture techniques and tissue engineering will likely improve in the efficiency and scalability of lab-grown meat production. Now, the development of animal-free growth media, bioreactor optimization, and cell expansion techniques are among the areas and scientists that are actively exploring to enhance production of capabilities. Now, innovations in product diversity and customization are also expected, and lab-grown meat has the potential to offer a wide range of meat varieties, including meats from endangered or extinct species, which is pretty gross, exotic flavors, and nutrient-rich needs. But I think the commercialization and consumer acceptance will play a huge pivotal role in determining the future of lab-grown meat. And as lab-grown meat products become more accessible and competitive, consumer perception and willingness to adopt this will significantly influence the trajectory. Additionally, lab-grown meat integration into the global food supply chain will require the collaboration with traditional meat producers and retailers, and coexistence and synergy between lab-grown meat and conventional meat industries can maybe pave a future way for future food systems, which I hate having to say that you have to work with the same industry that literally destroyed the planet and is literally killing so many animals and exploiting people. But I mean, that's certain theories of change for people. Would I ever eat lab-grown meat? The answer? Hell no. I would not consume any animal-derived proteins or animals again in my life. I've been vegan for almost 6 years. Do I think there's a place for people to consume lab-grown meats in the market that are non-vegan? Sure. I mean, I think I can't stop the technology from growing. I can't stop from what people are going to do to consume it. Are there people that are vegan that have consumed lab-grown meat? I mean, I guess. I mean, I'm not here to police or to take anyone's vegan card. That's not up to me. But I've been very transparent with my communities that I would never consume that. But I think on my end, would I support people eating it if that's going to help them to stop eating from factory farms and then transition to veganism or a plant-based diet? I mean, sure, but do I feel like it's, will help a lot of people? Sure. I mean, if that's their theory of change. But I think as vegans, we have the responsibility to ensure that if we're going to embrace different theories of changes and perspectives and different people coming into veganism through lab-grown meat, for example, I think there is an opportunity for us to educate them of the reasons why they should divest away from just consuming meat. Like maybe they need that slow introduction of going into meat, conventional meat, to lab-grown meat, then to vegetables. Because what I did, and I told this to everyone, like when I first went vegan, I went vegetarian first, and then I was vegetarian for almost 3 to 4 or 5 months, and then slowly started to cut off eggs and then cheese and then transition to veganism. It wasn't easy. I think some people have it where it's like we need to transition out. And even when I consumed meat years ago, it was like 2018, I didn't really eat fish as much. I would eat chicken and beef, but I cut off beef and then I was only eating chicken, and I slowly cut it off. And I think at the time, if there was like, some plant-based chicken that was better out there, because honestly a lot of the options sucked back then, I would have been happy to transition. But I do think in these cases where people are like very curious about the product, sure, why not? Now when people ask me, would I ever work with a lab-grown meat company? I think it depends on like what we define as work, right? Would I ever consume it? No. Would I ever put myself in certain spaces where they're talking about it to educate myself more about the topic and what policies, what systems are being designed? Yeah, I mean, I would definitely give it a tour. I personally would not eat it. I always tell people, like, I just can't eat meat ever again in my life. But do I think that is it a unique opportunity to showcase to people about food systems? Sure. I mean, I think the conversation around lab-grown meat, insect protein, plant-based meats, like they're all like convoluted and like intersected with each other in some weird way. But I do think it's an opportunity for education and for obviously the rise of disinformation and misinformation that's saying obviously lies about it, because as someone that saw misinformation hitting plant-based meat companies, it's like, they're not killing us. I think that it's, not for everyone to consume it. Sure, I mean, you can make a black bean burger and make it more natural. Like that's easier to do, and I like to do that too. I don't like to consume as much plant-based food products either that come from the freezer. I'll try to really just stick to tofu and doing these things like that. But I do think there is possibilities to explore that relationship. And I think lab-grown meat, whether we like it or not, or whether you disagree so much with this video, it's like, it's still going to exist. I mean, like, I'm not saying that there isn't a future without it, but I'm saying, perhaps there's something to look into it, to explore, to talk about. And that's, as vegans, we shouldn't strive away from that conversation if that's going to make more vegans transition into going that pathway. But I don't think, I'm not here to talk about people who have eaten lab-grown meat that are vegan. I'm here to talk about people that want to try lab-grown meat to hopefully think about food systems in a more broader context. But I do think at the end of the moment, like, my alignment, my sovereignty is to localize food systems, foraging, and really recognizing, like, can we actually empower smaller communities that have access to food through that. So I don't really know what the future will look like, but I think on my end, with any type of technology, there's pros and cons to it. I'm not trying to cancel it off, but I do think there is some possibilities and conversations that would open up from this discussion. So anyways, with that being said, lab-grown meat is a very unique topic that has risen over social media, and I just wanted to finally share my thoughts about it, because I think whether you are for it or against it, there's much to discuss. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about lab-grown meat. Do you think it's a sustainable food solution? Do you think it's the future of food? Do you actually think it has the potential to change the animal agriculture industry? I feel like in some ways no, in some ways yes, and that's something where I'm like, you know, I don't know where our policies are going here in the United States. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe if you love watching this video about lab-grown meat, and let me know in the comments below what type of videos you want to see next.